everyone. Can you hear me all right? All right, welcome and thank you for coming today. My name is Sherry Dietrich, and I serve on the steering committee for New Ulm Area Memory Care Friends. I have worked in senior living for more than 10 years, with about 5 of those years as a caregiver in memory care. Throughout my career, I have had the privilege of supporting individuals and families living with dementia. Thank you for joining us today for this important conversation. Today's program is part of an ongoing series of informational and educational sessions presented by New Ulm Area Memory Care Friends, a group of community members working alongside local organizations, businesses, and individuals to help make our community more dementia friendly. The purpose of today's session is to build understanding through real-life experiences, discover strengths as well as unmet needs in our community, and to connect community members with education and resources to support those living with dementia and their caregivers. I want to acknowledge our panelists who will be meeting in just a few minutes, CAST for providing the cafeteria, and South Point Credit Union for sponsoring this event. A couple housekeeping items. Please make sure you fill out the surveys that were on your seat, and if you didn't get one, please grab one. That information is going to be very important for us moving forward. We also have resource tables in the back for you to visit after today's session. Before we move on into today's panel presentations, I'd like to take a few minutes to share a brief overview of dementia, including some important information about its impact on individuals, families, caregivers, and our community. Dementia is an umbrella term used to describe symptoms that affect thinking, memory, communication, and problem solving, and the ability to manage everyday activities. Dementia itself is not a disease, but rather a group of symptoms caused by different underlying conditions. Alzheimer's disease is the most common cause of dementia, accounting for an estimated 60 to 80% of cases. Other common causes of dementia include vascular dementia, which results from damage to blood vessels in the brain, as well as Lewy body disease and Parkinson's disease. Dementia, including Alzheimer's disease, is not a normal part of aging. According to 2025 data reported by Alzheimer's Association, approximately 102,000 Minnesotans age 65 and older are living with Alzheimer's dementia. About 1 in 10 older adults in Minnesota has Alzheimer's disease, with the risk of increasing to 1 in 3 for those age 85 and older. Alzheimer's disease is now the 5th leading cause of death in Minnesota. As Minnesota's population continues to age, the number of Minnesotans living with Alzheimer's disease is expected to grow by more than 21%, reaching an estimated 120,000 people by 2025. Just to emphasize, dementia is a community challenge best addressed at the community level. To foster livability for all, communities must be equipped to support people living with dementia, as well as their families and care partners by becoming dementia-friendly. A dementia-friendly community is informed, safe, inclusive, and respectful. It provides supportive features across all sectors of community life and promotes dignity, connection, and quality of life for everyone. Today, we have the opportunity to deepen our understanding of dementia through the sharing of valuable information and powerful personal stories. At this time, I would like to turn the program over to our moderator, Barb Dietz, who will introduce our panelists. Barb recently retired after more than 30 years of service with Brown County Human Services, where she worked as a social worker, supervisor, and later as director. Her years of leadership and experience supporting individuals and families bring valuable perspective to today's discussion. Let's welcome Barb.
Good afternoon, and thank you everyone for coming. I will start by introducing our 7 panelists that we have here today, starting with Caitlin Gavrish. and she is with the Community Health Improvement Coordinator for Heart of New Ulm. Next, we have Tammy Huffman, who is a Brown County Human Services Adult Supervisor and Adult Protection Social Worker. Kim Bremer from Lutheran Social Services, the Regional Coordinator for the Caregivers Support Group, serving McLeod, Meeker, Renville, Brown, and Sibley counties. Gary Gregor, who will be speaking as a caregiver and dementia friend. Ashley Hagan is a program developer in Minnesota River Area Agency on Aging. She's been with Minnesota River Area Agency on Aging for the last 8 years, including work in several roles with the Minnesota Aging Pathways, formerly Senior Linkage Line. She works out of the Mankato office and serves 9 counties: Sibley, Nicollet, Brown, Blue Earth, LeSueur, Waseca, Wapalan, Martin, and Faribault. She provides advocacy, grant technical assistance, and implementation and expansion of new or existing initiatives that target older adults and or caregivers. Next, we have Dave Borkert, who is our Chief of Police here in New Ulm. And then on our Zoom today is Jill Toring, and she is the Program Manager for ACE Southwest Minnesota. So with that, we will start with Caitlin, and each presenter will have about 5 minutes to share with you their knowledge and experience, and perhaps a story or two from the work that they have done in working with seniors and those with dementia. So Caitlin?
Thank you. Can you hear me? Can you hear me better now? Perfect. So my name is Caitlin Godrich, and I'm the coordinator for the Heart of New Ulm project. Through the Heart of New Ulm right now we have 7 different action teams working to create a culture of wellness in Brown County. One of these is our mental health and wellness action team, and we are currently doing presentations on the dangers of social isolation. So this discussion in particular is dear to my heart because on the day of my high school graduation, after the party was over and all people were leaving, our home phone rang. And it was my great-grandma who had left my house about an hour prior, and she was lost. So everybody with the driver's license quickly got in the car, and this was in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where there's hundreds, thousands of ways that this drive could have gone wrong. So jumping in the car, calling law enforcement, trying to figure out where within an hour radius Grandma was, because she had no idea. And this was a battle, or the beginning of a long battle with dementia. My grandparents at the time were still working. They were coming to all of my events. They were very involved. Not on a dime, they had to retire and become full-time caretakers for her. And I wish I knew then what I know now about those dangers of being isolated. Because even though great-grandma isn't with us anymore, their patterns of isolation will remain. And as someone who is very passionate about active, healthy living, as well as being their grandchild who loves them, it's difficult for me to watch. So I'm currently, personally, just in a different phase of caretaking. I have 5 kiddos under 11. But one thing that we have in common is caregiving doesn't stop. When you're tired, when you're busy, when you're overwhelmed, when you're sick. Oh, when you're sick, super hard. But they still need you, and we power through. So I want to encourage you to take some time for yourself. I know when people told me, self-care after you have a baby, I would roll my eyes. Like, who has time for a bubble bath and a glass of wine, right? That was the picture I had in my mind. Like, who has time for that? That's laughable. But when I say self-care, that's not what I'm talking about. I want you to think of primarily these 3 things when taking care of yourself. First of all, moving your body in a way that brings you joy. It doesn't have to be a big shift in schedule. Just a couple minutes of movement, maybe a little bit of sunlight, just that little bit of a shift. Maybe it's a walk, maybe it's stretching in a chair. Whatever feels manageable for you, those endorphins and that dopamine will help you not only show up with more physical strength, but also with more patience and more joy. Second, preparing and feeding yourself foods that nourish you. Our gut and our brain are directly connected. And what we consume
immediately impacts our nervous system. So eating whole, nourishing foods sends a signal to our brain that we are safe. This helps us show up for the people that we love and take care of with more patience and more stability. It's baseball season in my house right now, and I'm on the go all the time. And I feel this quickly when I'm snapping at the backseat of my car when I'm eating too much quick, fast food. So taking time to prepare and have a plan to nourish ourselves well helps us show up for the people that we love. And then lastly, just connecting with others in a meaningful way. So the American Heart Association recently came out with data that compares loneliness to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It has a lot of impact on our overall health. At Alina, where my office is in particular, we do the health-related social needs survey, and that identifies social isolation and loneliness right now as the #1 cause for concern across all age levels. So I think just the fact that you're doing this event, you're here today and you started this group, shows that everyone here is really on the right track. Connecting with other people that might be in the same boat as you is really powerful and a great first step. So thank you for the work that you're doing, and if you're looking for more resources specifically to wellness or mental health in general, I encourage you to check out the Heart and Home website. We've got lots of good stuff on there.
Thank you, Caitlin. We'll move on to Tammy then.
I am Tammy Huffman, and I work at Brown County Human Services. I am a case manager and care coordinator, so I work with people over 65, and I recently started doing adult protection in Brown County 3 years ago. Prior to working at Brown County, I worked at an assisted living and nursing home here in town for 15 years. So my passion definitely lies with the elderly and being able to coordinate services for them. I'm going to talk about some gaps that we are seeing here in Brown County. We are definitely seeing a trend with dementia care and seeing it in younger individuals. With adult protection, we are seeing diagnosis as young as 55, 60, so it's definitely becoming more prominent here in Brown County. Some stories we have is the last couple adult protection cases we've had, it's individuals living in their own homes, no support systems, no family, and they're wandering outside. This is where people will make adult protection reports, and that's kind of where we become involved and are able to help that person coordinate services and move them to a memory care or assisted living if they need to. One thing we definitely will recommend is the wait lists for memory cares are significantly long. We always recommend right away when we start working with someone to tour all the assisted livings and memory cares here in town and see what best fits your needs. I know you may not be ready now, but it's always good to get your name on that list because you never know when that time's going to come. And some local facilities are requiring that you private pay for a certain amount of time before they accept any type of medical assistance. So it's really good to get that knowledge of the facilities that can best meet your needs. We're definitely starting to see a staffing shortage with primary care and paraprofessionals, so it really limits our resources in our area. So again, seeing your PCP and getting that proper diagnosis is essential. Let's see. We're also seeing limited transportation options for people. We always recommend having family with individuals who have dementia, and that's really a struggle that we are seeing. So what we would recommend is touring assisted livings and memory cares in the area and make sure you find the one that best fits your needs. Calculate your finances and determine how many months you're able to pay privately and when you may need to go on medical assistance. The assessment process in memory cares is becoming more difficult and more thorough, and we're seeing individuals with behavioral needs and alcohol or tobacco use history being denied. Reach out to Brown County Human Services and request what's called a Min-Choices assessment. This is where we are able to come out and meet with you and assess your needs and provide those resources to you of what may be available in your home or outside of your home. We're seeing, let's see, where am people who have to pay privately and who are not on medical assistance, we're seeing a struggle because they don't have that care coordination or case management to be able to maneuver that. So that's where this mid-choices assessment and having someone come out will be able to help you direct those needs. That's kind of all I have.
Thanks, Tammy. I just want to add a few additional things that Brown County Human Services, the mid-choice assessment that Tammy's talking about is done at no charge to anybody who requests it, and you should request it in the county that you reside, because every county does a mid-choice assessment, but for residents of their county. Brown County Human Services also is the agency that not only can help get you in touch with a case manager such as Tammy, but they also do the financial part of things. So if you are worried about your finances and wonder if you might qualify for medical assistance, that application process is also done through Brown County Human Services. So, Kim.
Hi, my name is Kim Bramer and I'm the Regional Coordinator for Caregiver Support with Lutheran Social Services. My work focuses on supporting caregivers of individuals caring for someone with a chronic illness. And I just want to share a little of my perspective of what I see as working well and what is challenging. Kind of piggyback off her is, the biggest strength is we're seeing that the awareness of dementia is growing and the importance is that they're being diagnosed earlier. So there's more things we can do for them. More individuals and families are starting to recognize the symptoms sooner and seek medical guidance earlier in the process. That early diagnosis can make a significant difference. It allows time for families to plan ahead, learning about the disease, and access resources and be more involved with the decision making. There's also a growing understanding that caregivers need the support, not just the person living with a chronic illness. As the disease progresses, caregivers often become the care coordinator of most of the things, managing everybody's daily schedules, taking on the emotional and the physical weight of the journey, providing caregivers with education and tools and connections, helps them feel more confident and reduces the stress and leads to a better outcome. We are also seeing that the impact of education and connecting when caregivers have access to that information, it reduces the fear and uncertainty that helps them feel more connected with people. And how LSS can do that is we go out and meet with the caregiver first and meet them where they're at. And then we do one-on-one support with them. And then we try to connect them with a support group and give them education, helping them feel more connected and more prepared. My little story that I just wanted to share is about Tom and Maggie. I'd like to share how it reflects what our position can help you guys with. Tom was living with dementia. His wife, Maggie, gradually became his primary caregiver, like many caregivers. She tried to manage everything on her own at first. Over time, the challenges grew and she became overwhelmed. When she was connected with LSS, it started with a one-on-one conversation, just having to listen and help her understand what was happening. From there, she received support with planning and connected with caregiver support group where she realized she was not alone. When that major transition came and she needed to make difficult decisions about care, it was helped through that process. So I helped her with emergency care planning. I helped her find a place for him. Helped her get her will, her POAs, all of that stuff in place. And that's, Maggie was just able to move forward once Tom got placed and become his wife again. So it's really hard being that caregiver when you're also their wife. So make sure you're trying to make sure you're caring for yourself also. That's really what else LSS has to offer. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks, Kim. Jerry.
All right, my name is Jerry Gertner, and I'm serving on the panel today as a caregiver. But having been put in the situation of being a caregiver, I have found the need for me to educate myself as well and to try to help this community. So I am also a member of the steering committee for the Memory Care Friends group that is starting. And myself and Carla Hansel, we went ahead and we connected with the Alzheimer's Association, and we got trained to be support group leaders or facilitators here. So there is a dementia support group here in this community now. And at my church, Christ the King, I talked with some of the other people in our church because I just saw that there were so many elderly people that were caring for somebody, not necessarily even with dementia, but they were caring for people. And you could see the loneliness and the sadness. And so we've also created a caregiver group there that is open for anybody. So I just wanted to kind of plug those things. But I'm on a journey with my mom and dad. My dad has dementia, and my mom, they were living 3 hours away, and it was really impossible for me to be a teacher and drive 3 hours, have a family. So I moved my parents down here, and I've been helping my mom to caregive for my dad, who is now in a facility. But through our support group, I have also met other people with stories. And one such person was caring so deeply for her husband for 5 years and taking care of her. In the last 2 years, he required nearly constant supervision, which is similar with my mom as well. We couldn't leave Dad home alone. Not that he would wander, because he didn't wander, but I know this lady's husband would wander, so that does happen. But it's just the fact that you don't know what they're going to do when you're not around. You have to lock things up. You have to try to figure out what they might get into so that everything is safe. And this lady had an amazing network of people to help her. She had family, she had friends, she had a wonderful in-home care people that came in and took really good care of him. But even with all that, she still, as his dementia progressed, she found herself losing herself. She couldn't go and do yoga, she couldn't exercise, she couldn't be in her garden. And these are also things that I've seen with my mom. Her world got smaller and smaller. It becomes your house. In some ways, your house maybe feels kind of like a prison after a while because you can't go anywhere. And that becomes really hard and isolating. But the stress became so difficult for this lady that the reality was that she, in November, was transferred to Abbott Northwestern Hospital due to an abnormal EKG. And it was extremely elevated with troponin levels, which is an indicator of heart damage. And she was diagnosed with a stress cardiomyopathy, also known as broken heart syndrome. This led to her husband needing to be admitted. And unfortunately, sometimes this is the reality. You love your person so much. You want them to stay home. But you cannot do it alone. And sometimes with a whole group of people, you still can't do it. So it's important, like these guys have talked about, you need to take care of yourself. I'm not even the direct caregiver like my mom, but I feel it in me because I love my mom and I know how much my mom is struggling with the caregiving, because even once they're in a facility, you still grieve that because you want them to be home and you want them to be able to be with you. And so it is a really hard journey and you cannot do it alone. And so myself and my friend who I'm talking about, who was a caregiver, we encourage you, like everybody else here, to take care of yourself and ask for help, ask for resources. And that's what Carla and I are trying to do in our support group. And that is what our Memory Care Friends group is trying to do. We had a Dementia Friends presentation here about a month or so ago. We're wanting to create some awareness within our community about how this need is growing. And we need to support one another. You can't do it alone. And I don't know about you, like my mom is 83, and she's not as strong and as she used to be when she was 50, And so we want to help each other, and we need to do that. And so that's my plea for what I'm doing here, is that we need to work together to help these people. Because it's a growing problem, and it's not going to get smaller. So, I think, the one perk that does come out of having your person in a facility is that you can go and spend time with them. You can be their wife, you can be their husband. You can step away from that caregiving, which is a nice thing, because sometimes when you're in that caregiving mode all the time, I know for my mom, that was the last thing she thought about, was having that like husband-wife relationship, like what can we just sit down and do together? Because she was so busy, always taking care of what the next need was, that she just didn't have the energy to feel like, let's sit down and have a cup of coffee and whatever that might be. So, I just urge you to, that we continue to communicate and talk with one another, support each other, find ways to build resources in our community to help each and every one of us. Thanks.
Thank you, Jerry. And both Jerry and Kim have talked about caregiving for caregiver support and how important that is. So I just have a few statistics for you. 168,000 dementia caregivers in Minnesota are providing 231 million hours of unpaid care, often enabling their loved ones to live in the community instead of moving into more costly residential long-term care. However, over half of the caregivers in Minnesota are living with chronic health conditions. Respite care provides necessary relief to family caregivers, allowing the caregiver to take care of their personal medical issues, complete tasks outside of the home, or have time off from the demands of caregiving. The Alzheimer's Association urges lawmakers to pass legislation that permanently funds respite care grants and increases state benefits that can be used to pay for respite care for dementia caregivers. Moving on to Ashley. Sounds good. Thank you.
Yes, my name is Ashley Hagan, and I am a program developer with MINRA, which stands for Minnesota River Area Agency on Aging. Our office is over in Mankato, but we serve southwest Minnesota, which is 27 counties. And with that, our vision is always to help older adults to thrive. Within MINRA, we work within advocacy, information and resources, all in hopes that we can help older adults maintain the lifestyle of their choice. And we do this in a few different ways. So with MINRA, we also partner with what's called Minnesota Aging Pathways. And this is a newer name, but this is Senior Linkage Line. It's been around since the early 90s, but we have a new name now, so I like to mention that, Minnesota Aging Pathways. And they are information and resource for the states. It's a free resource. You can call in and get information. A lot of people will call in on Medicare assistance, housing. They need a ride somewhere. They want to find out Meals on Wheels. Call in really for whatever. They'll help you. If they don't know how to figure it out, they will connect you and do that. But in addition to that online or over-the-phone support, there's also something called resource coordination for those individuals in the community who are private pay. And if you are interested in like a free assessment, we have staff that will go out and just kind of assess how the home is, what's going on, and be able to provide resources, support plan of different things, help you planning long-term, or if you just want to make sure you have information. And then also just provide check-in calls every once in a while. So it's a great thing to utilize and whatnot. And so I just wanted you guys to be aware of that resource, and I have some information on that in the back as well. I used to be in that role, and in that role, you want to be able to provide and assist in any way you can, but sometimes you can't. There's barriers, there's not services, there's not staff. And so I just wanted to share a couple stories that some of my staff have experienced in the area. So someone was working with a couple. Husband was a caregiver at home, and his wife had dementia. We get a lot of our referrals from the nursing home. So he was in the nursing home, or she was in the nursing home still, and they were trying to get her home, but she couldn't get in the home because they needed a lift. And so we threw out different options, whether that was home adaptations, just because there's narrow doorways, bathroom on the main floor, different things like that. Aging in place programs, volunteer transportation, all these things that could really help them, but sadly they just didn't have access to that, or there wasn't, they didn't fit the criteria. And so like my coworker I was talking with just talked about sometimes there's just lack of volunteer organizations. We have certainly a lot of home care and whatnot, but there's just certain things that can be assisted with companions, visiting friendly visitors, chore, things like that. So that's definitely something that we'd like to see more of, and hopefully we can do that. And then I had another coworker who worked with the client who had dementia and also worked with the daughter who was the caregiver. The client was still in a nursing home, but returned home and was needing services. Well, this daughter worked full-time, and not only she worked full-time, she ran a business. And the client actually lived above said business, and so it was left for her to kind of handle it all. This person was having multiple falls, and not only was that happening, but they were aggressive, belligerent, when not doing things that they wanted to do. The client would come to the business during hours just to engage, which was great, but it was hard for them to start to stay on their own. So this caregiver was very, very overwhelmed. And where they were located, services were limited, and at this point, it was getting to the point where it needed 24-hour care, and it just wasn't available. So those are just some examples of the people that I work with that work with clients in their homes. But a lot of the work that I do as a program developer works more with the state, with communities, and with providers that provide services for older adults. For services such as, we talked about respite, caregiver education, home or chore, things like that. And so some of the work I do working with groups and whatnot, I provide them resources, I get them connected to their need funding to kind of continue that or expand that kind of thing. That's what we work to do. And a lot of times because of the gaps, there's gaps. And there's not always funding available for that. We kind of have to think outside the box. Connect them to resources that maybe potentially could help them in their own communities that they didn't think about, or collaborate with businesses and nonprofits. So, and I guess for me personally, the work I do has always correlated into why I do what I do. I was raised by my great-grandparents, so I've been around healthcare and caregiving my whole life. And I started caregiving at a young age of 15. It started with my great-grandparents, my grandparents, and now I've even started with my mom as well. And it's great for me because I know what I'm talking about, and so I can go in there and I can be a great advocate for her. But there's a lot of people that they're thrown into these situations, they don't know what to do, where to go, and they're given sometimes vague information, or, you know, it's not always most clear, and sometimes, a lot of times, you're thrown into it. You know, you don't have time to prepare, things like that, and so knowing where to go to get the information that's available, I think can be hard, and that's part of the work that I do, is making sure, can we educate our referral partners to be able to provide more support for our caregivers. And then before I end, I just want to emphasize, with the work I do, we do through MAP, and then also the work I do, I sadly don't get to engage with individuals in the community as much, but I work with a lot of people that do. And there's only so much I can do, but I can certainly share my resources and connections and whatnot. And I think working here in Brown County, I've worked with Jerry and I've worked with Carla, and it's just a really wonderful thing to see. Because sometimes in those communities, small communities, all you need is a few people that say, there's gaps in services, let's change that. And so from going from no support groups to several support groups, and within a year, that's pretty wonderful and awesome. And so I just, you didn't want to applaud, but I'm applauding you because that's a really great thing. And that's, for me, I can help, you know, run with that and help get you, hopefully, where I can get you connected. So it's exciting to see, and I'm very thankful you all are here to learn, to understand, and to share too. I mean, you know, just share more about what the work that all of us are doing and what we're trying to do, and then we can hopefully see some change too. So
Thanks, Ashley.
yeah.
Thank you. My name is Dave Walker. I'm the Chief of Police with the City of New Ulm. I'm also a Brown County Commissioner, and I'm the Emergency Management Director for the city. So I've got a few roles in our community. Probably one of the examples that I wanted to share is I've been in law enforcement for 30 years now. Very early in my career, you know, so you're in your 20s, and I responded to a situation one time. It basically was cold, you know, Minnesota's cold, and it was winter time, and I'm talking with this lady, she's very articulate, and she's saying that she just had dinner. And this is just a, kind of have a little bit of the setting. If you remember back in the day years ago when law enforcement would have, basically it was always 11 o'clock snack or break at Perkins, and we would all sit around with the sheriff's office, state patrol, local PD, and different agencies, sometimes even paramedics, and people would join us, and we would have break together. So I was fairly new at that point. We got a call because someone was missing from a residence. And basically in those situations, one of the individuals would go, and at that point, there was no secret. The formula was who had the least seniority would go to the call. So that was me at that point, again, approximately 30 years ago. When I had responded, this individual is very articulate. It was a lady, and she's explaining that she had dinner with her husband and her had dinner with her dad, and she can't find him. She doesn't know where he had taken off to. It was cold, and as we're kind of walking through it, again, she's very articulate. I called out everybody, said, I need all hands on deck because we're trying to find a missing person. In the process, as I'm talking with her and I'm trying to gather more facts, dates of birth, age, so on and so forth, a few things weren't lining up. And I talked with her. I said, is there any place I could, try to get more information, find for more information? She had said, well, I can wake up my husband. And, part of me was like, well, why wouldn't your husband be here right now trying to help? Again, just in the back of my mind. And she did have a husband. We woke him up. She asked me to follow her into the bedroom, and I did. And when he woke up, he was very articulate, very sharp, and he had said, he goes, that's nonsense. That didn't happen that way. And I'm thinking it seemed kind of harsh, but he said, if your dad was alive, he'd be 120 years old. You're in your 90s, and you could tell the frustration because he was also in his 90s, and he was the caregiver, and he was. And he goes, you're up all night, and you could kind of hear them bubble a little bit, and she just felt like she was hurt. And he goes, he's been dead for decades. And again, you're kind of like seeing that transpire right in front of you. So that for a young officer, that was really a learning moment for me. Later in my life, my mom got dementia. And my brother and me, there's 7 years age gap between us, and I don't know if, so we always say we grew up in the same house, but not in the same sandbox. We were there at different times. Had the same parents, same mom and dad, but again, there's, in life, I don't know if we would say get along, but we don't agree on much. In reality, we've never really had to. When we were dealing with my mom when she got diagnosed with dementia, and even leading up to that diagnosis, we didn't agree on a lot. So I would try to relate just from my profession, what I was seeing earlier on, and trying to be in that stage of development. And when we had to make some of those difficult decisions, it was a little bit challenging because again, we kind of come from at least different age brackets, not necessarily completely wired the same as far as our thought processes, and it made it kind of challenging. And ultimately, we didn't always agree with what we saw or what the impact was that we were necessarily witnessing. So anyway, a little bit of background, it was a good learning experience for me. Kind of reinforced my profession. So we definitely see, my mom I grew up in Winthrop. I'm in New Ulm, and we're talking about 18 miles away. What we're seeing in the region as far as resources are somewhat similar, obviously. In law enforcement, there's basically 4 stages that we work on events. The first one is prevention. We're always trying to work on prevention because that's usually the best bang for your buck. If you can avoid something from happening by preventing it. That just makes sense. The other thing that the other stage is response. You never have a choice with response. When something's going on, a lot of times you're getting called by 911. That's just the result of it. And usually at that point, it's a lot of times people's worst state is when we're getting called to the event by 911. The other thing that we work on is recover. So like in situations, if you've got a tragic event, a building burns down or something like that, trying to recover from that, or a tornado goes through your community, trying to recover from that. That's an important stage in a lot of cases. And then the other one is mitigation. And mitigation is just if we're trying to find a way to lessen the impact and make it better. So what the two areas that I'm going to basically talk about is when you're responding to something, and I'll start there. So right now, back then, today, if we get called by 911, we're coming. And in situations like that, every situation is a little bit different, but our actual authority, our actual capability is somewhat limited. And one area that we work with, it's called a 72-hour hold. It used to be called a 72-hour hold. State of Minnesota now wants to call it transport holds. It's the same thing. And what that hold is if we're having a situation, if we can take someone into custody, and that's a strong word, but if something's unraveling, we can take someone with us. It's called a health and welfare hold. And when we're doing that, we have to. It's still custody. So when I use that word, it's not meant to just be a save-all. It's meant. I mean, there's criteria we need to meet. And a lot of times when we're responding, when I talk about like family members sometimes not agreeing on something, we definitely see that in law enforcement. You might have two siblings and or you might have a spouse involved with this, and you have a hard time because you're basically nothing nefarious, but you're getting different information or different impacts. So if we have a situation, one problem that we have, if I take someone, if I feel it meets the criteria where there's a health and welfare concern. One example of a health and welfare hold that probably some people hear about or they can maybe be familiar with is if we take someone to detox because they drink too much. That's usually generally kind of an easier one to determine. They're not able to, it's a safety risk to their own welfare or to someone else's. We can take them into custody protective custody for 72 hours, and we take them to detox. Another example is if we have like a mental health hold. Situation like that, we can take them to the hospital, but how we get them into services is going through the ER. And there's limited things that we can do with individuals. First of all, we have to find a place to hold them. Some type of behavioral health hospital, something like that. Again, in law enforcement, we're generally seeing probably the more extreme examples. The other thing, our reports go to Human Services, so we do a routing process and we try to contact everybody that we can to try to find solutions. So we work with a lot of our partners up here because that's part of the routing process. The other, as far as mitigation, the higher we come up in rank, and certainly as the chief of police, we're trying to find ways to make the community more resilient. And one area that we're doing is we're trying to find solutions as far as community health. We're lacking there. We're struggling with that. There's different things we can do as far as basically, you can hold something. If a person's carrying their cell phone, we can track people. But we have many times we're having our K9 unit going out. We're trying to search for people because we're trying to basically save their life. As far as community treatment, there's challenges, and there's just simply not enough resources. So we're trying to work with the community to try to fund that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. All right, then we will move on to Jill, last but not least. And Jill, I have to admit my ignorance. I'm not sure what the acronym ACE stands for, but I bet you can educate the group.
Thank you very much for having me and being able to include me via Zoom. I am in Pipestone County, so I am 13 miles from South Dakota border, so I'm happy to be here to provide what I can for knowledge. ACE covers 8 counties. We are in Lyon, Redwood, Lincoln, Murray, Cottonwood, Nobles, Rock, and then Pipestone. I myself am a caregiver of my husband who has vascular dementia and my mother who has Alzheimer's. I am also a retired social worker of 33 years. So I have worked with the dementias in various aspects of my life. I was also raised by my grandparents, and my grandfather died of Alzheimer's. Most of my life has been being a detective, because you don't know what you don't know, and you don't even know what questions to ask. So you see little things, and you note those little things, and then you start to form questions around those little things. The biggest thing that I see from most caregivers is the assumption that people know how to help. When you meet somebody with dementia, you meet one person with dementia because everybody's journey is very different, even if the diagnosis is the same. So with that being said, don't assume people know what you need, first of all, and don't assume that they're going to be helpful in a way that you need when they do know what you need. So you have to be very specific in your ask. An example, when my husband had his stroke, which is where his vascular dementia came from, I had been working and came home from work and forgot to get milk at the grocery store, which is a huge task because we did not live in a town where there was a grocery store. So now I knew it was going to be another hour and a half task to get milk from the grocery store. All of a sudden, something went off in my head, and I remembered my girlfriend worked in town, so I called her. I said, "Are you still in town? Can you pick me up a gallon of milk?" She said yes, and I immediately started bawling because that was a huge relief for me, but I needed to ask for that help. I needed to swallow my pride, not think that I could do it myself, because caregiving is a hard journey, and we all need hands out, hands up to help us. So if you hear nothing from me, please take care of yourself. Know what you need and ask for that help, because if you neglect your own needs, I can guarantee you cannot fill someone else's cup from your empty cup. And I'm going to reiterate what one of the first panelists said. Please get on waiting lists early, because I have been around so long that I have been part of nursing homes and assisted living closings. And that is a hard journey to go through. It is always better to have resources and not need them than need them and not have them. And I am open to questions.
Thank you, Jill. I think I will turn it back over to Sherry, and she will see to if there's going to be questions and answers. I'm not sure if there's time for that.
So we do have time for just a couple questions. Did anybody have questions for any of the panelists?
I only have one question. does dementia lead to Alzheimer's, or is it reversed? Or are they two separate illnesses?
They're different things. Dementia is just symptoms. And, I don't have a lot of authority to give a bunch of information and education on that, but we're hoping to have other series where we can have education.
Can somebody repeat the question?
She was just, go ahead.
I am wondering, does dementia lead to Alzheimer's, or is it reversed? Or are they two separate illnesses?
Dementia is an umbrella term, and Alzheimer's is a specific dementia. So there are 9 primary kinds of dementia. So it's kind of like cancer is the dementia, the word cancer, and then there's breast cancer, cervical cancer, bone cancer, all the different kinds.
Thank you.
All right. Are there any other questions? If not, I'd like to turn it over. We have a special guest contribution. So we've got a perspective that's going to help us understand dementia through a child's lens. Would you like to help? She's going to stay in the audience and just give us some information. Or did you want to come up?
I don't know, maybe I can just talk from here. You got a mic, I can take it.
Yes.
Thank you. Can you people hear me? Yeah, probably see me too. Anyway, I was in the back where I wanted to be. That was an excellent, excellent presentation. Very multifactorial, given in much depth, so you will better understand. There were lots of truths. There were no pieces of misinformation. There was no false facts. In this day and age, you have to be able to differentiate that stuff. This was all the true stuff. And what I suggested to them that I would be willing to do is I kind of acted as a little bit of tiny resource to the trio. They're the steering committee. You can be very, very thankful after a while they get a standing ovation. But I have a children's book. I'm very interested in storytelling, and I love children's books and the kids that go with them, no matter what their age. And I had a book that I purchased at Hy-Vee because Alan Page and his wife, he's an attorney who was a football player, they have a foundation where they get children's books published. They sell them through a place like Hy-Vee at half price. And I just happened to pick this one up, and I hadn't even read it until about 3 weeks ago. And it was called Don't Forget Eleanor. And I had planned, and we had run into some situation where the author and illustrator of the book didn't think that, I should put that on a trailer for New Cat, but it was okay if I just talked about it. So I'm going to give you just a little synopsis. The book is 15 pages long. It's very nicely illustrated, and it's about a big and quite older elephant and a little tiny elephant that could be the kid whose grandmother is Eleanor. So it opens up and it talks about this little elephant that would come on a regular basis, once a week, to Grandma's house, and they would go on an excursion, and it was just the two of them. And she would take them to all their favorite places, and hers as well. And she'd go to places like the flower shop, she'd go to the donut shop, which we have in town, she'd go to some place for a little snack, they'd go to a playground, they'd go someplace where they would toss a ball back and forth, they'd go to an art studio where he'd like to scribble around, or she, and then Grandma would take him back to her house where there was a porch swing that you could see on the front porch. And then the next page, it would tell a little bit more, and you would see how this little tiny elephant was going along with Grandma Eleanor Elephant on these excursions. But then all of a sudden something changed. In a couple of pages, there was this dark background, and there was this little tiny elephant, and he looked very sad. And he had discovered, one time he went to Grandma's house on the weekend, and she wasn't there.
and he got very concerned. So he started on the usual kind of tour, and he found out that Grandma actually had stopped at some of those places, and then she kind of lost her way, and she didn't have him. So she found her way back, and there was another couple times trips that happened like that. But then it became more and more concerning, because the little elephant couldn't even see that Grandma had gone anyplace. And he had discovered that one time she got lost for quite a long time, but she found her way back to her house, and on the porch, she was swinging on the porch swing. And then the next couple of pages, Grandma Eleanor, the elephant, sees her grandson and absolutely does not know who he is. And that little tiny elephant was very, very remorseful. It took him a while, a page or two, to kind of get used to what he thinks happened. And then he goes into his playroom, and it's all full of art supplies. And he's drawing a picture with the sun, he's drawing a picture with the flower shop, he's drawing another picture with the donut shop, and another one when they go to the barber shop. And then he went ahead of Grandma and put those things where she might be able to find her way. And it worked for a very, very short time. In the final couple of pages, you see the little tiny elephant who comes over to Grandma's house, and there's nobody on the swing. Nobody. And nobody ever sits in that swing again. And that is his final, plunging into a little kid's depression. But then he has friends. And his friends all come and kind of ask him questions. And he goes ahead, and they go out in the yard, and they get all kinds of supplies, and they start writing an album about the tours that he used to take with Grandma Eleanor. And that's the end of the story. And I thought that was so penetrating a story, because it applied to all ages. And when you think about it, most of you people do not look like little spring chickens. You look very good to me, but you know what I'm saying. And if they lose a relationship, a long-term relationship with an uncle or an aunt, like in New Orleans we call them tunties, or opas, or woodies and funnies and all that, it's all the same thing. If they lose that relationship and that person disappears, in their mind they don't know how to process this. But if you can think of a way that you can make that memory flourish in the future, it's very healing. Otherwise, I'm sure all of you people can remember when someone in your family maybe had severe dementia, say it was 80, 90, 100 years ago, and it's something you carry through your life. And you know what I hear people say? Oh, I had a grandma, or my mom, or my dad, they died of dementia, and I know I'm going to get it. That is not fact. Don't beat yourself up like that. They're doing things now at the Mayo Clinic and with the groups that this trio is working with. His name is Dr. Ron Peterson. He's in the neurology department, and we're looking at how do you deal with dementia in the future. It could be kind of scary to say, we just heard the statistics. It's getting worse and worse and worse. No, prevention is going to be the final thing. It's not going to be discovered in any of our lifetimes, I'm quite certain. But they're working on blood tests now where they can look at your DNA. Where they got a huge bank, not only in Rochester, but in other states, where you can take your blood sample, dissect out what's in the DNA and what seems to be common to people where it actually did run in the family. It doesn't automatically run in the family. It's kind of a certain kind of context, a certain makeup. Now we have some treatments, and most of you know, if you don't already, they're very expensive. I'm not talking about, vitamins and all this other replacement stuff, and don't eat this food, and don't eat that food, and eat plenty of this stuff, apple cider vinegar, and it goes on and on. We're talking about actually Federal Department of Pharmacy that's approved drugs that are on the market now. They're expensive, and for some people, but it's not a lot. They see some improvement, they don't see a cure. And for some, they see no benefit at all. So I just want you to be dealing with the hard facts. I'm always optimistic, and I personally feel that no matter what degree of dementia you might be associated with, either as a person or an acquaintance, in the neighborhood or a family member, there's always, always a way you can find joy and infuse some joy into that person's life. And I'm going to tell you that there's a table out there besides the resource table, and I'm sure that your MC is going to refer to it. But I want to thank Runnings because they donated a pile of flower seeds. And if you want to know what I think about flower seeds and how that pertains to taking care of someone who has dementia, you have to come to the table out there after a while, and I'll tell you, and then you can help yourself to some flower seeds, and I'll tell you how magical they can be for both the caretaker and the person who has that. And the other thing, which I don't have a lot of talent in, is music, and that can be for another time. But in our brain, people who may be mute, averbal, nonverbal, mute for years with this disease, if you play something they have found, it's a good research, if you play a song that was something they just loved when they were 20 or in their teens, and you play that, some of those people have actually started to sing. So it's a sanctuary that's protected. It's one of the last things that we enjoy in our lives to disappear. So I'm optimistic.
Can I just add one other thing? So we just started a memory cafe, and it will be here once a month. So in April, we will have someone come. He's John Olson. He's a photographer and a bird lover, and he will show his fabulous pictures of Minnesota birds. So it's a half an hour. A place you can come with your loved one that has dementia. It's a very safe, comfortable place. And then we are doing what Dr. Ann talked about, music and memory in July and June. So stay tuned. Many of you probably found us through CAST, so keep watching for that. So I'll turn it back over to Sherry.
All right, thank you, and thank you, Doc Ann, for sharing. If you get a chance, read that book. Never Forget Eleanor. It's wonderful, and it's amazing. You just read something super simple like that. That's what you need. You don't necessarily need a big novel. And there's a wonderful note at the end of it by, I believe it is the illustrator. We don't have any copies here at the public library, but our goal would be to try and purchase some that we can have so people hopefully can read the book. Just some encouragement to visit our resource tables at the back of the room if you have time before you leave, and continue learning. We will have upcoming educational and informational sessions, so please keep an eye out for those. Encourage others to attend and share what you learn with others. There's going to be networking opportunities available for anyone that wants to stay. Again, we want to remind you to fill out your surveys. That information is going to be very important for us moving forward. So if you didn't get one, Carla has one, but please turn one in on the way out. And we do have some freebies for you on your way out as well. Again, I want to thank all of our panelists for taking the time being here today. I want to thank all of you that came in attendance, CAST and South Point Credit